Welcome to Fanning Out, a podcast where we dig into our fandom. I'm Valerie Gritch, an independent band studies scholar who wants to share our interests and examine why we feel the way that we do about them. Basically, why does that thing matter to you and why should it matter to everyone else too? This episode, I'm joined by Mel. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mel Kelly. I actually met Val as during a whole fandom thing. Not the fandom I'm talking about today, but yeah, hello, lovely to meet you.
Yes, we go way back because of the Frank Turner fandom.
Mhm.
Um, the first time we met in person was outside Ali Pally
It's
in London.
2015. It was
Yeah.
my first English show. I just moved here from Australia. Um, I'm in, for the benefit of everyone, I live in Brighton in England, down by the sea. But I had just moved to London from Australia. I got there on like, I think the 4th, and I think the show was on like some ridiculous, like the 6th or the 8th. And I was freezing to death because I only had like Australian weight winter coats and it was like November in London. And that whole show was mad. It was mad. Like I met you, I met Evan, I got interviewed by Ben Morse for the movie, so I'm in a movie about Frank Turner fandom. Um, Evan was drunk and like ran out with a wristband and gave me a wristband, so I ended up at the after party like talking to Will Varley for the first time, who was too drunk to stand up appropriately. Um, I ended up giving Danny Cotter from Extra Mile a piggyback ride, somewhat against my will, but it was cool. She's tiny, and yeah, it was a great night. Ended up in a cab at around like 3 a.m. going home, and I'm like, okay, so London's fun. Yeah, London's great. So that was my first English show. So that was wild. It was wild.
And that's just like a nutshell of our fandom lives and
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
where can we go? How can we get there? Who's going to pay attention to us? Let's do it. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But we're not here to talk about Frank Turner today. We are here to
no.
talk about your favorite band, which is
Rush. It's Rush. Yeah. Yeah. So I my first favorite band, and because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, as you know, is about being a fan before the internet,
yeah.
right? So I'm elderly. I'm 57, be 58 this year, and so when I didn't have the internet, like when I first started being fans of things. So my very first real sort of fandom was Journey, in the same way that a lot of people's like real first fandom was like In Sync or the Backstreet Boys. Like it was that kind of fandom. And also, so the year now is about 80, 81, like around in there, right? And I've got like cassette tape. I don't own a record player yet. Um, my mom didn't buy me a record player for a while. Yeah, it's actually earlier than that. It's like 1979 because I'm still in junior high, right? So um, I went all the way in on like Steve Perry, who has imprinted on me a love of men with dark hair and big noses, which you'll see with like Geddy Lee and You've Met My Husband. And so yeah, he had like the voice of an angel. He was pretty to look at. He had like long, dark, silky black hair. He had like the 1970s kind of typical, really tight, but also bell bottom pants and platform heels, like they all did. And I want to know more about this guy. So what do I do? I'm like buying like Tiger Beat magazine. I'm buying like, you know, spending like all my pocket money to save my lunch money and buy like and wouldn't eat and buy like Kerrang because it was expensive because it was imported from the UK, and like cut all these pictures and put them on my walls, and I'm like doodling like Journey on like my mirrors and stuff. And so that was great. And also I'm this is relevant, I promise. I'm like a fat kid, right? So I'm bullied, I'm like picked on, I don't really have that many friends. I don't know who anybody else is that's a Journey fan, except like a couple of like the really popular girls, and they're never gonna talk to me. They have uh like band merch, they have like Journey shirts. So you don't really have a lot of that like floating around in the 80s. Like you couldn't really buy it in a shop. You could occasionally like order it through fan clubs and stuff. So when you got an album, there was like usually an address on there and you could write and then, for like, I don't know, get your mom to write a check for like $2 or $3 and you could be part of the fan club and you got a newsletter and you get the opportunity to maybe buy shirts that way, like by mail order, you send a postcard and they send it back. So they're really hard to find. And even if I could have found them, I was never going to find them in my size, right? I was going to actually wear it today. I bought a Departure Era Journey shirt because I always wanted one, like when I was a kid. So that was good until like I hit high school, but then I was never going to get to hang around with these kids, right? Like that was not going to happen. And music was, I mean, a lot of the listeners will remember maybe if they're like your age or maybe older. There was a time when music was like incredibly tribal because you didn't have Spotify. It's before MTV. So you had to like seek out the music that you listened to, and the way that you did that was through like the people that you knew and the crowd you wanted to hang around with. So I was never going to be like what we called a poser. I was never going to be into like Duran Duran. I was never going to be into like Madonna. I was never going to wear like bright colors and jelly bracelets and triangular makeup and the whole thing because I was a fat kid and I wasn't popular. So I hung out with like the metalheads, like the rock and roll kids. So Journey was not a thing for me in that setting. So I like still really loved them, but I've kept it on the down low. I didn't really say much about it. But at that same time, I'm 13 years old. The only good thing in my life is marching band. I started in band in fifth grade. And that's year 5 for Australia. And I think probably I don't know here in England because I didn't have a kid here in England. But anyway, it's I was young. I was probably 11, 12 years old, right? We can cut this back in. So right, so I'm in ninth grade. Oh, sorry, I'm in fifth grade, and I'm in band, right? I play the flute. Um, because I had always wanted to. My mom tried to make me play guitar when I was like 6, and I didn't want to play guitar, and I was incredibly bad at it, and I lost all my picks down the hole in the middle, and it always rattled, and it drove me batshit. And so, anyway, had to talk my mom then into getting me a flute, and I had been in like band all that time, so I started marching band in 7th grade, and again, I'm like incredibly unpopular. I'm fat. I got a shit home life. Like, I don't really have that many friends. But so band is like what's keeping me going. And so when I get to high school, I'm in marching band there. Like, I'm not the best one, but I'm there. Like, and I get to know the guys in the drum line because they had too many flute players. And my band director at the time is like, okay, there's too many flute players. So I'm going to teach you how to play melodic percussion. So that's like xylophones, that's like marimbas, that's like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I have no rhythm and I'm not very good at it, but yeah, that's cool. And always also drumline was like really cool as well. So that was like where like the dudes hung out. And I know that my shirt says Decenter Men, and that's like really weird because I'm going to do nothing but talk about men for like the rest of this pod. But anyway, and so I am younger also than my class. My birthday's in December. So I'm 13 years old in the ninth grade. And I'm trying to learn how to control a stick because both for I had to do a little snare drum thing, and then also when you play, there's a point to this, I absolutely promise, but when you play melodic percussion, like your sticks want to bounce, particularly like on a marimba because they're like a rubber ball on the end of a thing, right? So I was out riding my bike, and at this stage, I had both a record player and a Walkman. And I had my very first record, which was Styx's Mr. Roboto. And I was so excited about it. And I had my Walkman. Well, it wasn't a Walkman. It was a Walkman knockoff because Walkmans were expensive. And I had the radio function on. I was out riding my bike on a Saturday, and Tom Sawyer by Rush came on the radio, and I'd heard it before because like we all listen to the radio. Like that's where you got any idea about music at all. There's no Spotify, there's no anything on demand. At this stage, it's either just before MTV or MTV exists, but it doesn't exist in my house yet because it's not carried on my specific cable, right? Um, I know, yes. So I really, the only music videos I've seen at this stage are on like oh, what was the name of it? It was like the Midnight Special. If I could manage to sneak out and put the TV on really quiet after my bedtime, I could like watch that. But those were like whole concerts, right? Um, and I've also got like album oriented radio, which where that's where the DJ would like drop a stylus on like a whole record side, go out and smoke weed and go to the bathroom, whatever it was DJs were doing then, and then come back. Great. So I've heard like whole record size of things. And so I've heard Rush before. Like Rush was very much an AOR thing. And this is on Moving Pictures. So this album has not been out very long. I think Moving Pictures came out in, I want to say 81 from memory, right? And so Tom Sawyer's all over the radio. And at the very end of Tom Sawyer, Neil Peart, who is Rush's drummer, just does this like single, like perfect, like perfectly controlled snare pop. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And also, I like this. And my brain is very much wired this way, as you know, that I'm like, something can like take over my life, right? And so from that point on, like Rush like took over my life in the way that Journey had previously and kind of still did. I am a person who is capable of having multiple fandoms, or at least I was when I was younger. I tend to only have like one or two at a time right now, but and so I saved up all my lunch money again. It took me 13 days because I got $1 every day. That's how old I am. Well, 13 school days. And I went and I bought Moving Pictures, and I listened to it to death. And I also knew a lot about Rush because I was in drumline and all the drum kids were into Rush because Neil Peart was an, in my mind, not even arguably, remains, maybe along with like Keith Moon and Ginger Baker and John Bonham, one of the greatest rock and roll drummers of like all time. Like Drummers Magazine, if you win like 5 times the best drummer, they don't let you compete anymore. And so he's got 5 of those. Like, he's influenced people like in Primus and like, from Dream Theater. Like he's the guy. He's the guy. And so I was both in a social position and that I was, prog in those days kind of was in the same realm with like the metalheads, but it also wasn't a girl thing. So I didn't know any girls who were into Rush. They were on to like Madonna and Duran Duran and um, maybe the Cars a little, like if you're like gonna be having a bad day or something like that. But like we called them posers, and they had your like if you like pull up a stereotypical 80s, like think about like 16 Candles and those kind of movies. Um, like Molly Ringwald, my eternal enemy. That's what they looked like, right? I didn't look like that, right? At this stage, also band shirts are now just becoming available, like commercially because record stores are becoming a big deal, right? Like they'd always been a big deal, like they're a big deal through the 70s, but they tended to be more expensive. Like they're more attainable to me. So I can go into record stores. And so I had like Iron Maiden shirts and I had Ozzy Osbourne shirts and I was into all of that, right? But Rush was like my band. And so I embarked on this incredible search for information, right? Now harder because Rush is not going to be in Tiger Beat. And this is an incredible difference, I think, too, for like fandoms now. Like guys in Rush are like 100% not pretty. Alex, when he was younger, Alex Lifeson, maybe. He's a blonde guy. So Geddy Lee, whose autobiography, by the way, I recommend to any music lover. It's called My Effing Life by Geddy Lee. It is a story not just of like arena rock in the 1970s, but it is a story of loss and he's the child of Holocaust survivors, and it is an incredible read. Like, you don't even have to like Rush, just read that. But anyway, so they're not pretty. Like, none of the really popular bands are pretty. Like, think about Iron Maiden, think about Ozzy Osbourne, and you've got like pretty bands that are coming because now MTV is also getting more popular. So like by my sophomore year, I had MTV at home, right? And so now I see girls who are in fandom, like, now thinking back, I didn't think about it this way, obviously, at like 14,
Right.
but now I can see that fandom also becomes, particularly for women, visual as well as musical, right? And so I really looked down on that. I was like, oh, like, they're just pretty, but whatever. They're not anywhere near as good a musician as, like, the guys. And like Randy Rhoads had just died. Like, he was like one of the best rock and roll guitar players in the world, and I was all into that. And so that was like my bias. Well, they didn't like me. I don't like you either. And you're stupid and you're vapid and you only like things that are pretty and bright colored. And I hate you. Right. That is where a lot of girls were. Like, you see movies, you see 16 Candles and all of that, all the John Hughes movies. Like, those are all the pretty people. Those are all, I mean, you get a little bit in The Breakfast Club, like Ali Sheedy's character, but
Hmm.
even that is like so incredibly not what it was like to be unpopular
Hmm.
in, right? There's no such thing as, like, nobody ever talks to you about bullying. I guess the only saving grace of the whole thing, frankly, is that I there's no internet yet, so at least at the end of school, everybody leaves me alone. It's not like, kids today where they've got, their phones all the time, and the internet, and the bullying follows you home. Like, mine just stayed at school. Um, and so, yeah, I embark on this search for like information about Rush. I'm ordering like back copies of Kerrang from the UK and literally not eating lunch. Like, I'm saving my lunch money because that's the only money I can get my hands on until and this is how 80s this is. This summer that I'm between sort of 14 and 15, I ended up babysitting like two kids like that whole summer. And my mom lets me keep some of that money because my mom took like most of my money. It was a long story. And now I've got like some disposable income. So, I'm buying records, not just Rush, although I buy every Rush record up until that point.
Hmm.
Um, and, I've got Styx, I've got Iron Maiden, I've got Ozzy Osbourne, I've got Black Sabbath, I've got Slayer, I've got Metallica, right? Um, I've got like all this like really cool stuff. But what I don't have is, I don't have Madonna, and I don't have Duran Duran, and I don't have Aha, and I don't have like the stereotypical 80s bands that like come to your mind, because I hate those people. I hate their music and I hate them because they don't like me, right? Um, and I'm still in a position where you don't have that access to information. You don't have, unless you've got the album, right? You don't have immediate access to music. Like, and it's a pain in the ass. Like, when I first got into Rush, I had two things. I had a cassette tape, so I got a cassette tape. And I had, for whatever reason, my Uncle Paul's 8-track tape, portable 8-track tape player. I say portable, it was like that. It
Yeah.
was, it was it was like that. I'm trying to see my hands on the screen. Like, it was like that. It was like massive. And in fact, there's a bit in the Rush song, "The Fountains of Lemness." When I hear it in my head, it goes chonk chonk in the middle because that's where the 8-track tape swapped over.
You can hear
So,
you are permanently hearing the clicks.
yeah, yeah. Also, there's, oh gosh, probably Red Sector A. There's a bit, because I loved that song so much, where my brain hears the skip at the end because I dropped the needle a couple times. I scratched the record, so but like when those songs play back in my head, I hear the 8-track tape. I hear the skips on the CD. There's a Bruce Springsteen song as well. I think it's even Promised Land, that when I play it back in my head, I hear the skips. So look, I've got a little disposable income. I'm in and out of the record shop. I my life happens. I end up moving from California, where I live, to Mississippi. My mom got divorced again. And I still don't have any friends, and I really don't have any friends. I am, for reasons, I end up moving schools twice in quick succession. I spent like a month when I first got there at a very Christian, white Christian school, like a Southern Baptist school. I managed to get myself kicked out of there because I was like, oh no, don't like that. Um, and so I ended up at the public high school, which there was like 4 white kids in my graduating class, right? So the music that they listened to, again, it's also tribal, right? Is not music that I listen to.
Mm.
Although I ended up being friends with a lot of them anyway. It was kind of a chance to start over, which was kind of good because I wasn't the kid that had been bullied since like third grade. So, some of it was good, some of it was bad, but we definitely didn't have any music in common. And so I definitely didn't know any Rush fans, right? Um, but uh, I'm 16 at this time. It's my senior year in high school. I turned 17 that December, and I had my driver's license. I was an incredibly good driver, but I had my driver's license. The getting of which involved me driving in a square around a mall parking lot. If anybody wants to know what driving tests were like back then. And I'm driving my aunt's 1970s maroon Cadillac with white seats. It was like piloting a boat. This thing was as big as my house is now. Like my living room would probably fit in the front white leather bench seats. And so I've got wheels. I've got a little money uh because I have like various odd jobs doing stuff for the neighbors and that. And the Jackson Coliseum, this is in Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson Coliseum has rock and roll shows. And I'm like, I had been to some shows. It's too much of a diversion to go into here, but I sneaked out my window and went to stay on the green um, when I was a kid. And when I came home, my mom was asleep on my bed, and that didn't go well for me. But I did get to see Journey, and I did get to see the Cars, both of which I was very, very well interested in. Again, could tell any of my friends. I had a friend in another school who could drive because at that stage I was like 14, and I was like, oh, it's 6 o'clock, I'll go to bed. And yeah, got on the road. Um, I knew I was going to get in trouble, didn't care. But now I've got my own money, I've got wheels, I got a place to see shows. So I start seeing shows. I see Bon Jovi open for Rat, which was crazy. So that's
Yeah.
before 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. And I see Rush for the first time live at 16. And I stood there in the back in the dark in a room full of dudes, right? Or whatever girl that they could have enticed to come with them.
Right.
Because Rush was then, and I gotta say, still remains, like Rush fandom is just a sausage fest. Like it's all dudes. Rush didn't. I tested my memory on this before this. I went and looked at, made sure I'm still right about that. Um, Rush in a 40-year period maybe wrote 4 of what I would properly call love songs, right?
Mm.
So their lyrics are about politics, Neil's politics at the time, and it changes over time. Like one of the early 70s songs is called Anthem. It's about Ayn Rand. But then you get like later songs where he's like clearly not into that anymore. And, he did interviews where he was like, yeah, I was 24 and high. Like, what do you want? Like, Um, and so I've got all these words and all this music, and the words are just, you know, they like blow my mind. They like make me read things. There's a Rush song called Xanadu about the poem, and so I had to go and look that up and read it. I, as a miracle, Rush is on MTV once, and I learned how to pronounce Alex Lifeson's real last name, which is Zivlinovic, and I can also spell it, but I'm not going to, because he's a child of Hungarian immigrants. They're
Mhm.
Canadian. I learned Getty's real name, which is Gershon Weinrib. Uh, you know, um, I don't for many years. It's not until they win the Order of Canada that I find out that Neil Peart's middle name is Elwood. And that it's a family name. It's only you could find out that he was Neil E. Peart,
Yeah.
but and so there was like discussions for years, which I'll get to. So yeah, I saw my first Rush show there. I saw my second Rush show there. At this time, Rush tends to change its sound every 4 years, and so they get very keyboard heavy. Um, the album Hold Your Fire comes out, which a lot of Rush fans hate, but I really like because it was like very formative for me. It was my senior year in high school. Um, and I am just smitten with it. It's got Amy Mann does some guest vocals on it. And like some of the lyrics are like, a spirit with a vision is a dream with a mission. And I'm like, yeah, I'm into that. To me, I want that. Yes. So I finished high school. I go to university. Life moves on. I'm still seeing Rush shows. I go to a bunch of them in the summer between high school and college. Um, in my aunt's Cadillac, and I'm having to come up with like even crazier excuses about like why I'm out overnight. Because I got to like drive 1,000 miles an hour to like Alabama and Louisiana, and and does my aunt, my granddaddy. So I was living with them. I was meant to live with my dad. It's a long story. He doesn't have much to do with my life, but anyway, I gotta like think of good stories so I can get out overnight. And my friend, who's still one of my best friends to this day, she didn't like Rush at all, but she would like cover for me. Oh, I'm gonna go spend the night at Whitney's. Like, okay. And I would not. Like I would be off. It was fantastic. And so life kind of moves on. And then the internet comes. And the internet comes when I am newly married. I'm 25 at this point, right? Like the internet existed before. Well, no, it's not true. The World Wide Web existed before this, right? So
Right.
the first thing I do on my dial-up modem, like 32 baud modem, 36 baud modem, whatever, like really slow modem, one step above the modems that you had to put your phone on, right? Because I was not incredibly rich and then therefore did not have these early computers with access to bulletin boards, right? So I'm in like that second generation, right? And I get CompuServe and I find other Rush fans and it blows my mind. I'm speechless. There are message boards, right? Which today, like people like, yeah, it's a message board. Like it was a revelation that there were people who knew more than me about Rush. Like I didn't think that was possible. I had been to libraries, right? I
Right.
had ordered magazines. I had tracked down. There was a guy who was a fan. His last name was Benashowitz. I think his first name might have been Ben. Can't remember, but he wrote a book about Rush that was incredibly difficult to get your hands on. I did manage. I forget how, but I did manage to get a copy of it. And he turned into like a weird stalker, and then the band didn't have anything more to do with them, which I learned later. Getty talked about it later, but so like I thought I had like this gold mine of like information about this band, and everybody's like, nah, I got more than that. We're good. Um, and I've got people who share my interests and share my interest outside of a very tribal thing. So these are people that share my interests, but I don't have to worry about like how I dress around them because I'm on the internet and they can't really see that I'm fat because there's no cameras yet. Like we're on the World Wide Web. We're not like quite on the internet. Internet like requires a browser, requires like www, like who's her? We don't know her. Like
Right.
CompuServe is a program that you get on my initial ones for like the little tiny floppy disks, right? And you upload like 5 or 6 of those and wait 17 hours and try to get your modem to work. And then you rebuild your TCP IP stack. And then you maybe have to reinstall Windows. But when you're lucky, you get it working. And it's like a walled garden, right? So there's message boards in there. Basically that's all it is. It's message boards. They're not even chat rooms yet, right? Um, and then for whatever reason, I think because CompuServe was more expensive, I went to AOL, and that is where like fandom went boom for me. So two things happen at AOL. I meet a female Rush fan. Her name's BC Brandt. and I meet Andre, and they run the Music Messaging Center in AOL. And I make friends with them, and I'm all over the Rush boards there. Meanwhile, so now we're in the 90s, and Rush isn't doing anything. So to talk about Rush for a minute, all three Rush is a three-man band, always has been. Well, that's not quite true. Before from there was a period from like 68 to 74 where they had like some lineup changes and all of that. And they did used to be a four-man band. And in fact, Geddy Lee's wife, Nancy, was married to their keyboard player, Lindsey Young. But from like the albums, like starting from Rush in sort of 1974, where John Rutsey was still the drummer, they're a three-man band, right? So you've got Alex Lifeson, Alex Zavlinovic. He gets his high school girlfriend pregnant and marries her. She's Charlene. They have two boys. And Geddy and Nancy get married, and they have a son. And then Neil does not get married, but he is with a woman named Jackie Taylor, and they have a daughter named Selena. And Rush is also difficult to find stuff out about because they're not Ozzy Osbourne. Like, they don't bite the heads off bats, you know. They're not Meatloaf. Like, you don't, you know, they don't do much. They according to Geddy's memoir, they do a lot of coke and they do a lot of weed and they spend a lot of time on a tour bus, but they don't fuck around on their wives. Like, they're not like that kind of band. And I say this is incredibly important because about the time that I am on AOL and I'm on the Music Messaging Center, I've made friends with Andre and with BC. I start helping them run the Music Messaging Center. Like, AOL was incredible back in the day. They would just, yeah, here, you can code these screens. Here's our special like coding language. You can learn that. It's called Rain Man. I used to dream in it. And yeah, I'm doing it all volunteer, just for the hell of it. Neil's daughter is Selena, is university age. It's her first, she's leaving for university. Neil wrote a lot about this in some books, so this is like not a guess. He drove her, no, sorry, he followed her car to a gas station, made sure she got gas in her car, kissed her goodbye, and sent her off to McGill University from their house in Ontario. And she was in a single car accident and she died. She's 19 years old.
Oh, that's
Oh, no, it gets worse, but stay with me, it gets worse. So yeah, so the band is just, as far as we fans are aware, it's just done. So now we're in like 95, 96. Am I still at AOL? I've gone to Lycos. I'm still at AOL. Still doing music messaging stuff. Now AOL has given us a browser, right? And also ISPs, like internet service providers, are a thing. So it didn't used to be this way. Remember, you had a program that it ran your modem. Like, AOL was like this too. It ran your modem. You were in their little walled garden. You had their content, to use a very modern word for it, which was, and also at this time, we had messaging, like chat rooms, right? And so I had started working with BC and with Andre, doing chat transcription. And so what we would do, because there's no video, you can submit pictures, but it's kind of the thing, you click on something, you download it, leave your modem on, hope nobody picks up the phone,
right.
and build your internet connection, and you came back tomorrow and you would have an incredibly grainy black and white picture of whatever they say. Like, that's so, like, YouTube video interviews, what is that, right? So what I've got is I've got a phone number and I've got somebody on the phone, and I am giving them my little speech, which is, "Hi, Melinda. I'm going to type for you tonight. The way that it's going to work is I'm going to ask you some questions, and these questions are from the chat room. if you have a chat ID that you or your publicist like want to log in, like this is your publicist has got the link, like you're welcome to observe it. You don't have to say anything in there. Remember that I type about 100 to 120 words a minute. Most people speak at least 200 words a minute. I need you to slow down, and I may ask you to repeat something, and I may ask you to stop talking. Are you okay with that? And if you're Ozzy Osbourne, who I did do this with, yeah, sure. Yeah, I was, anyway. Um, and so that's where I like start getting way into fandom and also kind of working around the edges of the industry, right? So, and I'm on the internet. I've got an ISP, right? So one of the reasons that I'm cool with that is because I worked for AOL. I didn't have to pay by like the half hour. There was a time when AOL went from pay for like the month. You had to pay for like every hour, half hour you were online. But because I was a volunteer, I got my time for free. So I spent a lot of time that maybe people couldn't afford to spend
Mm-hmm.
in spaces online. Um, and then AOL gave us a browser, and then I had an ISP, and so I could dial in like outside of AOL. And now I find Usenet. Um, Usenet, where I met my husband, predates the internet actually. Is part of the World Wide Web. It was originally a way for like schools. It was like a bulletin board kind of service with like distributed servers where universities would like talk about things. Like my husband's initial foray into Usenet was Top Genetics, right? Or Top.Origins, sorry, which was about evolutionary biology. And I'm in a lot of places in Usenet. The place that I did not meet my husband was alt.rush. So the alt dot in Usenet meant that it was off topic in terms of like for university settings. So if you had the top dot, it was it wasn't this by the time that I was there, but it was originally set up like top dot was talk dot origins, talk dot chemistry, like stuff like that, right? But alt dot was like alternative, like it wasn't school related, and so alt dot music dot rush because you had the second tier too, right? So dot music. I spent a lot of time there, and I met a woman named Lisa Cherry, who ran Artists Against Racism in Toronto. Meanwhile, I have grown up. I've gotten married to the man who's not my husband, but my son's father. I'm living in Michigan, right? I make good friends with Lisa Cherry. Neil's daughter dies. And I'm also working with Artists Against Racism in Toronto. So I would like go to Toronto and hang out with Lisa sometimes. This is before I had my son. And uh, Lisa like calls me on the phone one day and she's like, "Oh no, I've got some news." And I'm like, "Oh no, what?" Um, Part of Artists Against Racism in Toronto was a band that she worked with is a guy called Mendelson Joe, who was one of Neil's very best friends. And in that way, she discovered that Neil's wife, not wife, Neil's common law wife, Jackie, had cancer and was dying. So this is within 6 months after Selena has died.
Mm-hmm.
And she's, we gotta do something. Like Neil has always been an intensely private person. Um, and that was like a known thing like throughout the fandom. And so Lisa and I hatched a plan to keep it off the internet. And things were smaller enough back then that I was able to do it. So I abused my position at AOL, and anything that got mentioned on the Rush forums got yeeted, right?
Yeah.
Um, I bullied people on Alt Music Rush. I told them they were liars. I challenged their sources, and I spent a lot of time there, so like I knew tons and tons of people, and yeah, we managed to keep it off the internet. Essentially, I spoke to people. I did more than bully people, like people who like clearly knew what was going on. I would like message them because we had ICQ back then, which is before MSN Messenger, right? Before AOL's messenger service. Before all of that was ICQ. It was like the earliest, it was an Israeli company actually, it was the earliest sort of standalone chat program, right? It was really common to have your ICQ number and your signature on Usenet. And so I would message him. I'm like, mate, don't, like, just, you know what Neil's like, and talk people out of it. So
Mhm.
bullying, talking, abusing a position of authority, we managed to keep it off the internet, or at least as far as I'm aware, until I think about 2 days before it was announced that, like, publicly, like by Russia's record label, that Jackie had died. And then it was a bad time to be a Rush fan because, like, nothing was going on. The band kind of announced through various circles that they didn't know what they were going to do. They put out a compilation album of like some live things. And that was like, it caused like 9 Days Wonder because it was, if you had Tonka toys when you were a kid, right?
Right.
You have like the stick for the Tonka toys, and then there was like, the round Tonka toy things where you could put the stick up through the middle, right? So there
Yeah.
was two of them really close together, and there was one like way at the top, like way far away from those two. And so we were like reading all sorts of stuff into that, like, that's Neil Dunn, like, what's gonna happen? And yeah, I moved to Las Vegas with my ex-husband. I had my son. When I was pregnant with my son, I called him Tiny Rush fan. Um, and TRF was how he was known, like all over the internet, wherever I was. Um, Even after he was born, like, I didn't like tell people his name. He was TRF. He was Tiny Rush fan.
That's
And it is great. When he got married, he's 30 now. And when he got married, we got matching tattoos. When he was born, the Rush song "The Analog Kid" was playing, and the Analog Kid, it was really like weirdly prophetic. So it's about a boy who's just at that age between like leaving home, growing up and leaving home and dreaming about it. And he dreams about, a fawn-eyed girl with sun-brown legs, and that's like very much like my daughter-in-law. And it starts out, hot and windy August afternoon, and my son was born in August. Um, and we have little matching cassette tapes tattooed on us, and in my handwriting it says "Rush the Analog Kid," and I put like 1995 on it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, so I kind of like muddled through, and I had other fandoms. And to be honest with you, I fully kind of dropped out of music for about sort of 5 or 6 years, from the time my son was 5 or 6. My marriage broke down. I had met my current husband on Usenet. We'd known each other for years. We were not like a thing. But then my marriage broke down. His long-term relationship broke down. We literally dated on the telephone because he's in Sydney. He's in Australia. I'm in Nevada in the US. Um, and he said, come visit him. And we made that work. And then I went home, and then I missed him. And then I came back, and we got married. And we've been married for 23 years. My son came over, and he grew up in Australia. So right before all that, though, um, Vital Signs came out. And that was the next album after Test for Echo, not counting the live album thing that came out. Um, and Neil was back. And I was insane. And there was a period of time where my ex-husband and I knew that we were getting divorced. He knew that I was moving to Australia. However, we were incredibly poor. And so we were stuck in the same house, right? And Rush were coming to Las Vegas, where I lived. And I went, look, I'm going to go. Do you want to go? Like, I'm going to go. And so he went with me. I managed to get like fourth row during the Vital Signs tour. So that's them back. And it was incredible. And I went between like screaming and crying like the whole show. I've still got the shirt that I bought from it, like bits of it. I'm kind of saving it for a quilt because I don't think I could wear it anymore. Like, some of the seams are a bit
Mhm.
out, but I've kept it all of these years. And then I went to Australia, and it was very difficult to remain a Rush fan because I didn't really tour over there. Um, and yeah, and they came out with several other albums. Neil started writing books, which I thought was amazing. Um, he'd already written one book. No, sorry, that book came out right after Vital Signs, in which Neil likes to, he used to like to ride bicycles, and then as he got older, he liked to ride motorcycles. And he had done a bike tour of Africa, of Cameroon, and he wrote a book about it. And again, like, so I've got the internet, but it's still, I'm gonna say, so when that book came out, I was still in Michigan. So I'm going to say it's like 98, 99, right? So there's still not a whole lot of information out there, not a lot
Mhm.
of accessible information. You've got like GeoCities, but then, you very clearly, you quickly learn that like whatever is on some of these things is just absolutely not true, right?
Right.
But then later he writes Travels on the Healing Road, where he talks about the motorcycle trip he took in the year after Jackie died. It opens with like Selena's death, and then Jackie's illness, and like, so now I can see the other side of like what was going on when I'm just desperately trying to keep everything off the internet. And
Right.
no, he didn't know. None of the Rush guys have ever found out. I've met all of them exactly once.
Mhm.
Um, Lisa arranged for me to meet Neil, and he came in the room, and it was a surprise for me. And he popped in the room where we were, and I went, "Oh my God, you're Neil Parrott." And he looked at me, and goes, "Yeah, you're right." And then he walked back out because he's shy and he does not like people, right?
Yeah.
So um, I met Getty and Alex via Ours Against Racism as well. We got them to like sign a bunch of stuff. So, but anyway, they don't know. They never knew. Um, and they're putting out these great albums, and they put out but I'm in Australia, and I'm like too far to really travel. It's early in my husband's and my marriage. Like, I don't have enough money to like follow tours in the way I did later. Like, I went on the Flogging Molly tour from Australia,
Mhm.
uh on the punk boat. They did a cruise, but I'm not able to like engage with it, but I stayed with it, and it was fantastic. And then, we moved to the UK, but by then they weren't touring at all. I missed like their 40-year tour because we had just moved here, and I couldn't be like running around. I think I actually had visa issues still because I was on a temporary visa like right at first, and we were still like working that out because my husband brought over here for work. So I miss all of that. And then there's nothing like from the Rush guys or anything. And then on the 6th of January of, it was before COVID, so it would have to be 2019. I'm going to ask the internet. I remember where I was, but not the year. It's 2020, right? So it's January 2020. So COVID hit in March that year.
Yeah.
Um, it was the 6th of January, and I got up and I looked at my phone, and I thought there had been a natural disaster. My phone was just blown up. Neil Parrott died of glioblastoma. He died of cancer. His daughter was 9. He had remarried. He had stopped touring to like spend time with Olivia, his daughter. And he had a website, and so he'd been writing about that. And like, I feel like an idiot crying about it, but it broke my heart. It broke my whole heart that he went through all of that,
Right.
finally had it all back. And like, he wrote one of his articles. I did save a lot of them, and I'm glad, because that website is down now. I'm pretty sure Carrie, his new wife, took it down. He wrote an article. They had a place in the Laurentines in Quebec, where they used to go skiing, and he'd had it for many years. And he wrote this amazing article about Olivia wearing Selena's skis and
Mm.
her boots when she was like 5, and because they would like do like cross country skiing, around the little cabin. And he talked about like how he would one day tell her about her sister, and how it was like double images, and he could hear Olivia
Right.
like giggling, and then it was like Selena, and then it was Olivia again, and about how happy he was, to have another chance and to have a new family. And yeah, and so he died. And yeah, that was kind of the end of it for me. Um currently, so Getty's written a couple of books. He's into baseball. He's written a book about all the various baseballs that he has. He collects signed baseballs. Like, if you want a guy for this pod, try and get Getty and get him to talk about baseball, because man, he's your guy, right? And also collects like a lot of Negro League stuff.
Hmm.
Has like a bunch of signed baseballs and memorabilia from the Negro Leagues, which I think is amazing. So he wrote a book about that. He wrote a book about the bass guitars that he owns, and then he wrote his memoir. And so that was 2 years ago. I saw him here in London at the Barbican. I was in the third row, and it was a book tour, right? So he was interviewed. He was talking about his book, and then the second half of it was meant to be audience questions, and Alex Lifeson comes out of the back, and I was a wreck. I'm in an auditorium with like a bunch of like 40 to 60-year-old dudes, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, big beards and big bellies and kind of, those kind of, dad dudes, right? And here I am with my pink and purple hair and all of that, and I am sobbing. I am sobbing because I thought at the time, like, I think I even said to you, like, when I came out of it, like, that's it. Like, that's the last time
Yeah.
that I will see them. That's the end of it for me, right? Because they talked about Neil a lot,
Hmm.
and they were all incredibly close. Neil used to call them the guys at work when he wrote about them. And Getty's book goes into quite a bit of detail about Neil's struggles with glioblastoma and how they had to keep it quiet because Neil and Carrie were like, nobody can know. And so he's lying to his friends. How's Neil? Oh, I haven't talked to him lately, and kind of made easier because there'd been a not really a falling out. There'd been some tension. Uh, Getty had wanted to continue to tour Clockwork Angels, which was their last album. And Neil was like, no, I'm done. I don't want to anymore. I'm going to go home and hang out with Lily and Carrie. Um, and so there was some tension, right? Which Getty in his book says, and I fully believe him, that like the minute he got the email, he was actually in London when he got the email from Neil saying, yeah, I'm going to die. Like, this is what's happening. So it was kind of easy for him to be like, yeah, I haven't really talked to him lately. And yeah, and for me, like that was the end of it. Now, what they're doing now is they have an amazing Finnish female drummer whose name is now escaping me, and I'm not going to look it up. And they're touring, and I'm like, no, I'm done now. I don't. I'm not mad. Like, there's, as you would imagine, there are people online who are incredibly mad about it. Oh
Right.
my god, they freaking invested, right? Um, and then you've got the people who are mad at the people who are mad about it,
Right.
and they're all dudes. They're all dudes, like, and I'm like, first of all, the tickets I think for England were like £350 or some ridiculous amount of money. And secondly, I feel like when I saw Getty at the book tour, I feel like in my heart I just went, that's the end of that. That
Mhm.
I've come all the way. And, if they put out a new album, I'll listen to it. And, I follow them on Instagram and I keep up with the things that they do, but I'm not, I want to keep that
Right.
memory of those things. And I feel like that's the package of it. Right. From the kid who was bullied and didn't have very many friends and had this one special thing that she really loved and spent so much time like researching and trying to get information and running in from other parts of the house, like if there was a video on MTV, and then saving up my money to get the albums, and you know have it, calling my son Tiny Rush fan, and all the things, all the pieces. Rush is so incredibly ingrained in my life.
Hmm.
Um, but I felt like at that book tour, that was the package. I'm not upset about it. Like, I've left some fandoms in angers, you're aware.
Yeah.
Um, but that it's not that. It's just that part of my life is complete, right? So yeah. So I mean, I guess what I wanted to talk to you about, I think the most was what it was like to be a fan, back before the internet, back in the 80s, back when music meant when your music that you listened to dictated who your friends were and who you hung out with and who you liked and who you hated. Like it's not that you just didn't like them, you didn't hang out, you had like a visceral kind of we don't like those people. They're not a very tribe.
Mm,
Um and yeah, so that's it. That is me being a Rush fan. So
that's incredible though. That you
yeah,
have it so like perfectly bookended.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like you write a lot about celebrity death, and like it hit me hard when like Freddie Mercury died. It hit me very hard when like Scott Hutchison died, but nothing like and my phone blew up because everybody knew that
Hmm.
um that my everyone I know or even have ever been acquainted with, their first reaction was, "Oh my God, check on Mel," you know.
Right.
And yeah, so it's just so sad, but also Neil, like as a person, because he wrote all the lyrics, and I often ask people this question, or like when I've done interviews myself in the past, I'm like, are you a music person, or are you a music and lyrics person, right? Because I'm
Right.
a music and lyrics person. You know, I gotta have the words. Like I don't mind the occasional instrumental, but I gotta have the words. They mean something to me, and so for every bit of my life, for like every phase of my life, like when I first got on Usenet, where I met my husband, I was Liquid Grace from the Fountain of Lemneth, Panacea, Liquid Grace, Let Me Touch Your Fragile Face. Um, when I worked on AOL and when I worked on Lycos, my name was Stormy, and it was from look into the eye of the storm, look out for the force without form. Um, you know, it just the words that he gave me, the talent that he gave me. I mean, the thing that he taught me is I was never going to be a drummer. I should stop trying because holy cow, was he good. Um, and then, like, I'll tell you this anecdote and I'll let it go. But so good, in fact, that so his daughter was 11 when he died, and before that, she's like, Dad, I want to learn how to play the drums, and he's like, I'm not going to teach her because so he gets her a drum instructor, and the guy walks in, and this poor guy is a drum teacher, and he's walked in to meet his people, and he's standing in front of Neil Elwood Pit,
Hmm.
right? And Neil wrote about it, and he's like he saw the color like come out of the guy's
Right.
face, and he's like, so okay, so change of plans. I'm not going to hang around here. Um, I'll be back. Her mom's upstairs. Like, I'm gonna go out and you're gonna give her a drum lesson. And he's like, okay, yes, sir. And so he didn't go out. He went round the corner and went out the back door, went round the corner, and then snuck back in and like hid in the hallway to hear Olivia have her drum lesson. And he said he did that for like every lesson that she did because he intimidated her teachers so much that he couldn't like function with him
Right.
standing there. Because like every drummer in the world, whether or not you like Rush or you don't like Rush, and I know prog's a lot for some people, and punk was the answer to prog, and like I know all that music history and stuff, and I like them both. Like, but if you know anything about drumming, you're like, oh my God, it's Neil Peart. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, so that was and is Rush for me. So there you go.
What would you say is the best place for someone to start listening to Rush?
Oh
What
gosh.
album or
So
song?
that is a super hard question because they had a habit. They did 4 albums and a live album, and then they would almost every 4 albums they would completely change their sound almost.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna say if you like really hard music, maybe start with 2112, which is their, but be prepared that 2112 is, I think, a 23-minute song. So you got to get into it. But 2112 or maybe Caress of Steel, maybe Hemispheres, right? If you're
Mhm.
into like fantasy and big boomy noises, like that's the thing. If you're into like synths and like 80s stuff, I mean, always Exit Stage Left, which is their biggest album today. It's got all the Rush songs you've ever heard of, Tom Sawyer, The Red Barchetta, um, or like Power Windows or Permanent Waves. So you're talking about like The Analog Kid, you're talking about like Red Sector A, you're talking about like Spirit of Radio, which I think everybody's heard. Um, for me, like honestly, my two favorite Rush albums I would recommend to everybody is Hold Your Fire, which is nobody's favorite Rush album but mine. Very synth heavy. Um, loved it. Don't watch any videos though because they're so incredibly dated. Like, oh my God, they're bad. Uh, and Clockwork Angels, which is the last song of the last album that they did. It is a concept album and almost a play. Like, and I think Neil knew that it would be the last album. Honestly, he didn't know that he was going to die at the time that he wrote it, but I think he was done. Like,
Mhm.
and is a sum up, and a discussion of like a man's legacy and how, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say because they change their sound so often, but yeah, all of those depends on what you like.
It's nice though that they have something for everyone potentially.
Yeah, I mean, uh Moving Pictures and Exit Stage Left is a live album, and I think Moving Pictures is the album that probably a novice would start with because those are the songs that are always on the radio. Like if you've heard a
Mhm.
Rush song on the radio, it was probably Tom Sawyer. It was probably Spirit of Radio. You know, it might have been the Red Barchetta. Like that was the era that they were on radio. But remember, radio changed then too, right? So you went
Right.
from AO where the DJ dropped a stylus on the record side and went off and got stoned or had sex with his girlfriend or whatever and came back, to the kind of packaged radio of like the 90s and early 2000s where essentially the studios dictated what was on the radio and therefore what was popular.
Hmm.
And find a lot of like bands from the 70s and 80s like drop off at that time, right?
Yeah.
Plus, you've got grunge that comes in, which, pop it, grunge is the antithesis of prog. So you don't get a lot of that. But yeah, anyway, there you go.
Is there anything else you want people to know before we close?
What do I want you to know? Um, I want you to know that today is in some ways better if you like music because you can really unashamedly be a fan of something and not have it control your whole life. Like, I mean, it if you're like me and you, it will eat your life, but it does it. You can be friends with people now and like entirely different music, and you can dress a certain way and not have it reflect like your musical taste. Like, I think that's better now. The tribalism um element that went away with like Spotify and that kind of thing where you could just have music on demand. All of a sudden, you weren't, in some ways it's bad for fandom because you weren't all in.
Hmm.
And in some ways it's good because, as you're aware, like I like a variety of things from like, really, really, really folky kind of stuff all the way to like, give me some Ozzy or give me some Metallica, like that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, I think fandom today is a much healthier place, but I do think that I do think kids today are missing out on the information hunt.
Hmm. The joy
And
of
I
discovery.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Being made to wait while, the magazine that you order comes in like 2 weeks later and, you know, oh my God, I never knew that, like kind of thing. It's all at your fingertips now, so you don't have to work for it. And that's not bad or good, it's just different. So
Right. Well,
cool.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun today,
I
and
hope you had fun too.
listeners
Yeah.
enjoyed listening.
Yeah. I mean, I may come back because I have other things I'm nerdy about, as you know,
Yes,
but
it will happen.
all
You'll
right.
hear from Mel again.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.